say, you know what, I have an idea for something. I'm going to take a copy of it. I'm going to like add to this kernel, and then I'm going to say, and then I'm going to like, either I can work with it on my own, and I can just like kind of like add the whatever new features that come out to this version that I have, or I can say, you know what, I'm going to contribute this back. And then if it's good enough, if it like adheres to like all the ideas, and it's not like breaking anything too crazy, then usually it'll be accepted, and then other people can like go forward, and then that goes into computers all around the world, and that's kind of like the idea.
So you use GitHub for that, eh?
Yeah, well, so GitHub is kind of, so I mean, yeah, if we want to go into really details, yeah, GitHub is.
No. Let's not go too into the details yet. We'll have to see what I'm saying when I say we maybe need a couple of these videos with you. I think you have really a lot of very fascinating info.
Yeah. So I would say Git is what people use. So it's just like a version tracking software. The idea behind Git is I change something. I can make a note about what I changed, and then I can save it and then share it online. GitHub is it's one platform that allows you to do that. That's it.
I'm going to translate sort of.
Yeah, think of GitHub as like Facebook for developers.
Right. I want to translate sort of some of the stuff you said too, because basically what I heard you say was in the development of this open source software, and like when the Linux and the GNU folks came together, it's kind of funny because the cat came right back into the room when you were talking about them working together, which I take as a great sign. It's not there right now, but just wandered right in. But so basically what you said is that when a software is sort of produced, when we speak the language of coding, and you yourself are not even a coder per se, you're not a developer per se, right? You're sort of just
at this point, I'm now becoming a developer. Like now I'm a package maintainer for a couple libraries on Python and in Anaconda, and I also am like I think I'm like I do a lot of like code cleanup and code review. I think at this point I've been doing it for like 3 years now. I think I'm a developer now.
But we could say that you sort of learned on the side of your desk, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I learned quite a lot in like the years just before. Like I think like just before I got the job where I'm at currently. I think for about a solid year, I was teaching myself a couple languages just in order to like get a better sense of things. So I mean, I was teaching myself SQL. I was teaching myself Python. I taught myself a little bit of like HTML, JavaScript, a little bit of CSS. And then, before that, I mean, I was kind of like using the Linux operating system for work. That involved just kind of like understanding how to manage my environment, things like that.
It was really one step at a time, and it took a while, but worthwhile in the end, eh?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, like, this is like, it's arguably like the reason why I was able to get the job I had. I mean, they were looking for somebody who was very interested in technology, who had experience using open source, experience in Python. My other background was in kind of like numerical modeling. So I was able to kind of do like work with like the types of data formats that writes out into, and so that was kind of like that was kind of like it all kind of like built on top of it of each other. And now I'm at the point where I'm like I'm starting to build libraries that help people do that type of science. So it's kind of I think it definitely I can't say it wasn't worth it.
Awesome. So I have a couple of things here. So first of all, you would say that you're a white hat developer, right?
I mean,
as far as hats go,
yeah. As far as hats go, I think like the idea behind hats is you have it's the type of kind of like, well, I mean, hats are kind of like that's like a hacker thing.
Well, what I'm saying is ethical hacking, right? Because what you have to do is when like it's sort of like bug bounties, right? Like you test for bugs and then you find them, and it's actually a career to do bug bounties of sorts.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
bounties.
no, that's it. I don't do bounties, but yeah, no, part of my job is to like I set up a lot of testing suites, and so I ensure that we're doing things like you could call, I think that, well, what you could call this is it's called continuous integration or continuous development, depending on where you're doing it. But the idea is somebody creates like a change, they add a new feature, and then we need to make sure that this feature works on like a multitude of different types of computers, different types of platforms. And so I'm the person who writes the code that runs the tests on all these different platforms. And like, and
Right.
so that's kind of it's not like a hat type thing, because I mean what I'm doing is I'm just like I'm setting up testing suites, and then I'm making sure that people are following good practices. It's more, I think, if you want to talk development, I'm closer to um, not a scrum master, but like I'm like a I think I'm one of those types of like software development styles, like agile or scrum. But like, yeah, no, like I have like a role in that. I do. I make sure that people are following good practices, and that we're meeting deadlines and we're chasing down bugs. That's
Fascinating.
kind of it. Yeah. So that's kind of what I do. I don't want to say that I do anything with hats, because I've never collected a bounty. I'm not that good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But interesting. Okay, so I want to use my facilitator hat for a moment here, just to sort of summarize some of what's been said. So I noticed that you said that on an individual level, it's super useful for you as an individual to have gone down this path, and then you sort of talked about on the system level also when you were talking about Linux and GNU and sort of how you can. You didn't really say this, but sort of copy paste the good parts, and then you can add on additional components if you wanted to create your own, say, social media or your
Hmm.
own sort of new sort of Linux for your area, like your business maybe has particular needs or something. But the key is really that it's almost as simple once you have a certain skill set as pressing copy and paste in a
Yeah.
lot of ways.
Yeah.
And
It kind
so
of
and so
is.
so we can look at a lot of what we've got right now. We could say that some of our apps that we're using that you could imagine that those which are open source are able to be sort of a part of that bazaar almost much more effectively because you tied it into donations. You're saying people could live off of donations for their good work, and they could sort of, if they're doing the work that they choose in this way, it's useful and notably an improvement upon existing systems. And on a system level, there's lots of room to improve
Hmm.
in terms of transparency and things like that. What I understood was that with this skill set, we can learn how to do well as individuals and also even learn how to do our best together by sort of this bizarre approach of growth within the
Yeah.
open source ecosystem.
Yeah.
And so it's as easy
That's
as that almost.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not easy. It's not easy. But it's like
Nothing is.
definitely it's definitely like, I think that the this altruistic idea of like, oh, if we were to make like software free, and so anybody can build anything they want, you can, like, build out whatever you want. You can do whatever you want with like technology, and you can trust that it's not going to, like, employ algorithms that like make you do evil things, like vote for the wrong person in an election, or things like that. Like, that's kind of like the idea behind, like, it's kind of like the idea behind the open source movement. It's partly it looks at free, like free. There's free as in free beer, and free as in freedom, and that's kind of like, those are the two sides of like open source. So like the free beer part would be like, oh sweet, I get an operating system, and like I can do like I can, like, run my like writing software without having to, give like Microsoft like $100 a year. Um, and then the other thing is like, oh, and also like, I know that like they're not running a keylogger and like looking at what I'm reading or looking at what I'm writing and then sending that to, the Chinese government. So
Right.
there's like two like aspects to the freedom of things.
It's
I
almost like
just
a
want to,
third prong.
yeah, kind of, yeah. Yeah, it's a
Interesting.
little bit. Yeah. So there's a little bit, like, the thing about open source as well is, like, I mean, anybody can go in and look at like what is behind a program. Like, I can go like on GitHub and then say, oh, I'm interested to see like what's the code running my like Office software. I can look and see like, oh, I don't see any keyloggers, so I guess I can trust it. Like, that's kind of the idea. With
Yeah.
Microsoft, you don't know.
Yeah.
Like, they're always
So
working
so
on features.
I'd love to chat about Microsoft real quick because I heard that the CEO, I believe, came out recently, actually, and said that they were on the wrong side of history, quote unquote, the wrong side of history when it comes to
Interesting.
open source.
Yeah.
Literally a few months ago. And so
Really?
now yeah, and so they're operating in the crypto space a little bit with sort of within the Ethereum network, but it's not really clear how it seems like that relationship is still being fostered. But it's really fascinating to see, right? Because as we talk about this third prong sort of developing, I think we noticed that one of the poles of the other prong, which was Microsoft, also notices that it's happening,
Yeah,
which
well,
is quite fascinating.
it's funny because in the 90s, like I mean the hatred towards Linux was pretty palpable. Like Bill Gates was he regularly like shat on Linux. He said that, you know, it's like it'll never compete. And now, like I mean, I think it must have been like a couple years ago now. Like I mean, Microsoft, they created their own version of the Linux kernel. So, you know, like I mean, the licensing, the open licensing of like the Linux kernel allowed for that, and so they're like, yeah, you can, yeah, feel free, you can just you can put it into your software. That's fine. Um,
Fascinating.
yeah, and so
As a
they
as a relative,
hmm?
go ahead.
Oh yeah, no,
I was gonna
I just wanted to say that like it's a bit funny because you could argue that like Linux is definitely, I mean, it's still like Microsoft, I would argue, still poses like an enormous threat, just based on the idea, the strategy that came out like a long time ago, and it was to, I think it's like I can't remember. I think it's three things, but like two of them were like expand and extinguish. So pretty much like what they do is they get involved in something, they make it really convoluted, and then they kill it. And that was like the idea, that was like the strategy they had for how are we going to deal with Linux, and that was in
Interesting.
like internal documents. I still think that they're not trustworthy in this. So like when you mentioned like GitHub earlier, about I think it was either last year or 2 years ago, yeah, GitHub was bought out by Microsoft. So it's a bit strange. It's a bit strange. Like I mean, now I'm kind of like, oh, I don't know how I feel about like maintaining my profile there. Like I think eventually I'd probably move towards like an open source version of GitHub, and there's a couple options that are out there. Just because I don't want to give like Microsoft everything, you know.
Interesting. So you would say that Microsoft hasn't done enough. So they've used some lip service, and they've said that, yeah, we were a problem back in the day. And so
Mhm.
you would say that there's still considerable work for Microsoft to show,
Well,
if it was truly coming along in the sort of emergent conversation. Then you're saying that they haven't done enough.
Well, I'm not really saying, no, I'm not saying that they haven't done enough. I'm saying that their priorities are different. Like they're a very large corporation. They do develop quite a lot of interesting software, and like I mean, I can't fault them for that. The problem, like I mean, like it's great that they're creating like this really like interesting ecosystem with like lots of tie-ins, lots of interchangeability, like that I find interesting. What I don't like is that you have no control over it. Like you can't see what's going on. You have, you know, like there's regularly like security practices that are terrible. Apparently, if you want to like develop anything on the like home screen of, or like if you want to develop, what is it, the start menu on a Windows computer, the